But start off with having your forehead resting on the floor, please. Or your chin, doesn't really matter. Forehead or chin, what's most comfortable for you. Okay, so those of you who are looking at your partner lying on the floor, could you put your hand on their spine, just between their two shoulder blades? And now, person lying on the floor, lift your head a little bit from the floor and put it down, just that. Lift your head a little bit from the floor and put it down. Yes, your forehead or your chin. And as your partner lifts their forehead from the ground, feel what happens in that little area between the shoulder blades. You can feel free to wander up through there, sometimes closer to the neck, sometimes a little bit further down the shoulder blades, but right in that space between the two shoulder blades. You'll find a lot of little knobbly bits there, the back of the spine. Now, keep your hand just resting there. And now, person on the floor, could you turn your head to one side and rest your face on the floor? And then lift your head, bring your head back to where it was. Return your head to where it was with your forehead resting on the floor of the chin. And do that several times so that your partner can feel what happens in that part of your back between your shoulder blades. Turn your head to the right, put it down. No, turn your head to the right, put it down. Bring your head to the middle, put it down. That's it. And can you feel that that whole part of the back changes shape and shifts and moves? Can you feel that? And that tells you something, that this isn't just about a movement of the head in a couple of vertebrae of the neck. This is a movement of the head much further down through lots and lots of different joints. Now, person on the floor, could you bring your head to the middle again? And person that has got their hands on, could you please keep one hand on that place between their shoulder blades and put your other hand on the back of their pelvis, that big sacrum bone on the back of their pelvis, all the way down here. So you'll have one hand between their shoulder blades and one hand on the back of their pelvis. And now, person on the floor, please lift your head a little bit, turn it, put it on the floor, lift your head, bring it back to the middle. And those of you that have your hands on your partner, now you can sense how far down through them does this movement go? Does it reach their pelvis when they turn their head to one side? Okay. Take your hands off for a little while. Person on the floor, decide, turn your head towards the forearm that's pointing upwards. Turn your head towards the forearm that's pointing upwards. Okay. People are doing the hands-on work. Put one hand on each of the shoulder blades. So find the shoulder blades to start with. They're those big plates of bone on the back of the chest. Quite broad, but not flat all the way. Yeah, just find their shoulder blades. Okay, now person on the floor, lift the right arm from the floor a little bit, put it down. Just the right arm, yep. Just put the right arm off the floor, put it down, and feel what happens in your partner's shoulder blade, those of you that you have your hands on. Can you feel what the shoulder blade does? Hmm? Now, person lying on the floor, just lift the elbow from the ground, keep the hand on the ground, just lift the elbow and put it down, and now feel what your partner's shoulder blade does. Just lift the elbow, put it down, feel what the shoulder blade does now. And now, person on the floor, change what you're doing. Just lift the hand and the wrist from the ground. Feel what the shoulder blade does. And feel whether the other shoulder blade does anything. And now go for the third variation. So here's the last variation. Person lying on the floor, could you take your shoulder blade higher from the floor? Lift your shoulder higher from the floor. And now feel what their shoulder does. And now lift the whole arm from the floor. Wrist, elbow, shoulder. And now feel what your partner's shoulder blade does. And some of you might feel that the other shoulder blade is also kind of getting involved a little bit. With some individuals, that will happen. Okay, person lying on the floor, let that arm rest. Could you go through that same sequence, but on the other side, the other arm? So the arm that's pointing downwards. So you stay in the same position, haven't changed. Go across now to the forearm that's pointing downwards, and person on the floor, go ahead, lift the arm from the floor, put it down a few times. And then a few times lift the elbow from the floor and put it down. Just the elbow, you can leave the hand on the floor. And now the hand from the floor, the hand and the wrist. And you might start to feel in your hands that with each different way, the shoulder blade kind of moves slightly differently. And now the left shoulder, or whichever arm is pointing downwards, that shoulder lifted higher from the floor. It's already off the floor for most of you. And now, person lying on the floor, could you lift both arms together and feel what their shoulders blades do when they lift both arms together? Can you see with your eyes how the shoulder blades start to come more and more towards the spine? Okay, That's enough. Please come up to sit and you'll swap roles. Okay, person lying on the floor, could you have your arms in that cactus position and turn your face towards the forearm that's pointing upwards? Remember, I gave you a choice about which arm is up and which arm is down. Now, rest your forehead on the floor. Put your hand in that place between your partner's shoulder blades, and you'll find it's quite long. It's about a whole hand length from fingertip to heel of palm. It's quite a long area. Person lying on the floor, lift your head a little bit, turn it to one side, put it down. And then lift your head a little bit, return it to the middle, lie it down. And feel with your hand what happens in that place in your partner's back. With some people, that place will move quite extensively. With others, it will move minimally. And then you can slap your partner's bottom. No, you don't do that. Now, keep your hand there and please keep turning your head and bringing it back for just a little while longer. And those of you who have your hands on your partner, notice something, that when their spine turns, can you see with your eyes whether their chest rolls? Is there some correlation between the spine moving and maybe the chest moving? Okay, now keep your head turned to one side, preferably to the side that the forearm is pointing upwards. Put your hands on your partner's shoulder blades. And person lying on the floor, with the forearm that's pointing upwards, could you lift that arm off the floor and put it down? And feel through your hands what your partner does in order to do that. Are they just using one side, or is the other side also involved in some small fashion? Oh. Okay, so now go through some of those variations. A few times, lift and lower the elbow. Keep the hand on the floor. Does the shoulder blade move? And is it moving differently than it was before? Okay, now leave the elbow on the floor, lift and lower the wrist and the hand. And when they do that movement, does their head move? Can you see with your eyes whether their head is moving? And now finally, lift that shoulder higher from the floor. The hand and the hand stays on the ground, and bring it back. Does their head move? Yeah, you might see their head moving. Yeah. And now you lift the whole arm from the floor and put it down, and notice, is there something different? Or does the shoulder blade move differently? Okay, now in your own time, could you explore those variations, but with the arm that the forearm is pointing downwards? So same kind of sequence. Yep. So now you're doing the other arm. So the forearm that's pointing downwards, you're now doing. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. You haven't switched arms. You just switched which shoulder you're focusing on. So now your hands are still on the shoulder blades as Sue lifts her whole arm on her shoulder blades, not her spine, her shoulder blades, her shoulder blades, her shoulder blades. That one too. There. That's it. That's it. And for those of you who are doing the touching, this is also attentionally demanding because your attention can switch back and forth between hands, eyes, hands, eyes, hands, eyes, because your eyes will pick up things that your hands can't get to. There'll be a moment that you actually start to see when that shoulder lifts from the ground, you'll see your partner's head actually get moved a little bit. And then you finish off with the whole arm lifting. And then when you've done that the other arm completely, then you return to lifting both arms off the floor. And now you can see how both shoulder blades move relative to the spine. Can you tell, if you closed your eyes, could you tell which shoulder blade they move first? Could you tell which side they're stronger on? Could you tell if they're holding their breath? All right. Please stop. Have a little bit of a discussion between yourselves before we switch over again. Just a very short little discussion. Whatever you shared, whatever you found, whatever you felt. That's what you found, huh? He just likes the mat. That's good. Connectivity. I like it. Okay. So switch roles again. One person lies on the floor. Maybe not. No, you want to get on with it. I want to go on with it. One person lies on the floor. Lie on your front. Put your arms into that cactus position. Now, those of you who are using your hands, could you please go up to your partner's head and put your hands on the back of their head lightly? Just enough so that you can feel if something happens there. Not too heavy. Person on the floor, turn your head towards the arm where the forearm is pointing upwards. Now, person on the floor, bend your knees. Bend your knees, have the soles of your feet towards the ceiling. And now listen carefully, because some of you have got one arm up and some of you have got the other arm up. Whichever forearm is pointing upwards, tilt your legs in the opposite direction. So if the right forearm is up, tilt your legs to the left. That's it, and come back. Now, those of you that have your hands on your partner's head, at what moment do you feel the head being moved? Either pushed, pulled, or turned. I think that exhausts the possibilities. How soon? And because their legs are bent, you can almost measure the angle. Like, are they at 30 degrees? 15? Oh, nearly 90. Yeah, how soon? Is there some connection between the tilting of the legs and the movement of the pelvis and the effect on the head? A person on the floor, tilt your legs the other way. The other way and come back to the middle. The other way and come back to the middle. Yeah. But that's okay. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be good. Yep. Yeah, now you're doing opposite. Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's good. And here you are again in this very interesting position. Your hands are telling you something, but if you look down their back, your eyes tell you something else. Now, the person lying down, just for a moment, unbend your knees, rest. Those of you that are using your hands, could you now feel free to wander from the head to the place between the shoulder blades, to the shoulder blades? Just go all over and find out what happens when your partner is tilting their legs like a windscreen wiper left and right. Okay, so people on the floor, could you please bend your knees? Start to take your legs a little bit left, a little bit right, and give your partner enough time to sense what happens in your shoulders, what happens in the spine between the shoulders. If you want to touch your partner's rib cage, you feel free to do that. Really explore visually and through touch what happens when the pelvis rolls, because that's what's actually happening now. The pelvis is rolling. And there is a very particular use of your hands that you're engaging, enough to feel what's happening, but not so much to interfere. Not too heavy, but also not too light. All right. Now, person on the floor, stop, unbend your knees, and now listen carefully. If your head is turned to the left, you'll be bending up your left leg. If your head is turned to the right, you'll be bending up your right leg. And you'll be doing this many, many times. When I say bending up, sorry, I wasn't specific enough. You're bringing your knee up towards that armpit. Now, person using your hands, same thing. Feel what happens with their head, their neck, between the shoulder blades, the chest, the shoulder blades themselves. Now start to explore what's happening. What's happening? Mhm. And now, here's where your eyes and your hands can work really well together. Because if your focus is on your hand, in the peripheral vision, you'll see something move. You can, and your attention can be caught. Oh, I just saw something move down there in the rib cage. Let me put my hand there and find out what's going on there. And you stay there for a little while, and then you go, oh, I just saw something move on the other side. Let me put my hand there and see what's going on there. So there's this toing and froing between central, crisp, detailed attention and that being caught by something else, and you go there. I'll let you play for a little while. Okay, please stop. Switch over, swap over roles. So person lying on the floor, get your arms into the cactus position. Turn your head towards the forearm that's pointing upwards. Partner, have your hands in contact with your person's head. One hand, two hand, both are fine. And from this position, person lying on the floor, could you bend your knees, have the soles of your feet towards the ceiling? If your face is pointing to the left, tilt your legs to the right. If your face is pointing to the right, tilt your legs to the left. Feel what happens with your partner's head. Notice if it gets moved. And if it gets moved, does it get pushed? Does it get pulled? Does it get turned? Could be a combination of any of those. And then you've got two sources of information. You've got the information coming from your hands, but then you've got your eyes. At what moment does the movement arrive into your hands? Because there's a lot of going on before that. But at what moment do you go, now, it arrives now? How tilted are your partner's legs at the moment that the movement arrives into your hands? And the contact you're making is light, enough to feel what's happening, but not so firm to interfere. Okay, person lying on the floor, stop, unbend your knees, rest for a moment. And now, feel free to put your hands on your partner's shoulders, between their shoulders, on their neck, on their ribs, wherever you like, as your partner returns to tilting their legs. Tilt your legs left and right. And those of you who are tilting your legs, please feel free to stop, rest. You don't have to continue in order for your partner. Just rest when you need to. And you are now free to roam with your hands, finding out more and more about what happens as your partner tilts their leg left and right, or in shorthand, rolls their pelvis. How does the rolling of the pelvis affect the shape of the rib cage, the movement of the rib cage, the movement of the shoulder blades, the spine? And you can be as specific or as general as you like. Remember, your touch is light enough to get information, but not so firm that it stops your partner from moving. Now, person lying on the floor, lengthen out your legs. And to finish off with, just start to slide the knee towards the armpit of the arm that is pointing upwards. And you are now free to use your eyes to look at the shape that your partner is making, to use your hands to find out detail. Return to shape, detail, shape, detail. Yeah, your eyes might see which parts of them readily lift off the floor and which parts stay on the floor. Your hands might reveal things that your eyes cannot see, like the degree of work that's going on underneath the skin. And you can be as specific as you like, one vertebra at a time, or one rib at a time, or you can be as general as you like, several vertebrae, lying your hand over several parts of the spine or several ribs. Okay, that's enough. Please stop. Have a little bit of a chat with your partner. What kinds of things did you feel from the inside? What kinds of things did you notice from the outside? Water. Does it? Oh, good, good, good. All right. So, just stop a moment. Stop a moment. And we will revisit a particular idea before we go into the next ATM. Remember last week we said something about the advantage of doing things lying on the floor is because your torso, you're not involved in keeping yourself upright, and muscles that would involve you keeping yourself upright and then free to move. Remember something about that? So if there is a demand on a certain part of your body to be used to keep you upright, then of course that part of you isn't free to be engaged in much else. It's kind of, that's what it's involved in. So what do you think the suppleness of that area might be compared to other areas that are not involved in keeping you upright? Less supple, less available, less supple, less available. Of course, you could train yourself for it not to be so, but that's quite an extensive training because that's kind of going against the way we're designed to operate. Now, how does that relate to this particular lesson? So if you're in the floor like this and you're sending this arm upwards, then how are you going to free this arm from the floor, and how are you going to free this arm from the floor at certain moments in the movement? If you're leaning on the right, this arm does not get freed. It becomes almost like having to be in a supporting arm. So there's something that you have to need to do with your weight to get a free gesturing arm. So it kind of dictates where your weight has to roll. But it's much easier to do that if you know that you're applying that kind of principle. Does it make sense? So when you go through these awareness through movement lessons, if you go through the principles that you'll gradually collect, you'll go, oh, that's why we're doing that rolling to the left. But it's quite an open-ended exploration, but the principle is being applied. Now, this lesson continues on in this vein, left-right shift, left-right shift, to move the arms in their very particular directions. So just letting you know, but that's the principle that's going on. Where will you put your weight to free the arm? Because ultimately, what you want for any intentional action is for the quality of the motion to be the same from start to end. You know, so if you're well organized at the start to begin the motion, when you finish it off, it's just as easy. So that's like the ideal, that everything just feels as light, as easy, as simple as the very first moment you started it. Now, it's an ideal. It's an ideal. But in some ATMs, for certain of you, you'll experience that. And each person will experience that in some other ATM. There'll be a set of ATMs that you go, I know what that's like. I know that feeling, but not necessarily for it. Yes, Philip, go ahead. Yeah, you're into. Yes. It's coming. It's coming. I was just going to simply repeat it. That's okay. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Lind.
Yeah, the image of your spine like a centipede.
Well,
yep.
well, it was the first, you know, from touching the head, was that we're like this sausage.
Yep.
Of interconnected sausage. And then I thought, oh, well, we're really, well, then it developed and we became bony worms.
Yeah.
And then just thinking about what you were saying, it's also the sense that your spine is like the centipede, like you have these little legs and you're doing that kind of, this little thingy. So a centipede's like a bony worm.
Yes, very much so. Very segmented, yes, very, very segmented. And if you look at the structure of the spine, you can almost see the centipede's legs on either side, right? And then it gets really long legs somewhere else. It's little oars, starts to row. But never. So yes, you have a multi-segmented structure. If that structure is involved in keeping you upright, all those segments reduce how much they can be centipede-ish. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
But once you've freed it from that, then it's even better. Now, how much so for the arms that kind of like are just kind of hanging off muscle? The only point of contact between your arms and the skeleton is right here, at the joint between your collarbone and your breastbone. That's the only bony point of connection. Everything else is just suspended in muscle. So if you're busy trying to support yourself with this arm, good luck trying to move it. It's going to be tough. So that's why in that particular lesson, he starts to ask the question, which way will you roll your pelvis? Yeah, which way? And that question continues. So as the lesson gets more and more complex. Yeah. But that's the feeling, that if you can generate a light, easy, simple movement at the beginning, that's what you just keep looking for. You just keep looking for that. And that will lead you through the various instructions. That will lead you to find the organization. And I can't help it, I've got to say this last little bit, which makes doing ATM a quite tricky process. Because am I paying attention to just the movement of the body in space? Or am I also paying attention to the qualities that I experience in myself as I move myself? And it's neither one or the other, it's both. Am I paying attention just to the movement of the body in space? In other words, where things are going when? Or am I also paying attention to my own internal experiences of the quality of the motion as well? And of course, the answer is both. But where do you put the priority? You put the priority on the internal experience of, can I make it? I don't care. I don't care. Yeah, we're going. They're taking the arm around here. I don't care. I just need to focus on this. Can I make this easy? Can I make that light? Can I make that? And if you go like that, if you stay insistent on staying with the quality of the movement, the rest comes. Just does.
Quality of the internal experience.
Yes.
More makes it easier for me to kind of, because otherwise I'm still focusing on the movement internally.
Yeah.
Where it's actually the internal experience completely, rather than just the internal experience of the movement.
And what makes it so complex, Sue, is that you don't disconnect from the movement that's being required. Otherwise,
Yes.
you just simply lose form. Right, you might as well do anything.
Yes.
So you're connected with the form that's being asked of you, but you're primarily connected with your experience. Yeah, the internal quality, does it feel nice? Does it? So,
Yeah, no, and that just also highlights to me the importance of that language as well. So you're saying the quality, and then when you say the internal experience, kind of gels more with me.
Yeah,
that's all. Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to do that pairs work, first of all, so that you can become more acquainted with the the form of the lesson, because by looking and touching, you get more acquainted with the form, but also the person gets another thing. The person that was being touched, they get something else. Now they get contact. For those people that are not so clear about what's going on in different areas, just that contact might be enough to go, now I know a little bit more about the form. Now I can be more occupied with, that's what I do to make it feel nicer. That's how I can breathe easier. That's what makes that lifting of that arm lighter. Yeah? Because when you're not having to be preoccupied with what the form is, then you're fine. So that's why I went looking for a name for this movement, or else that's a lot of words. It's like, geez, cactus is really nice. So thank you. Thank you, Violetta. All right, please find your mat. Let's do another ATM.